G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. We are going to go through some massive changes that are happening for investors in Queensland. We've got a lot of people that have properties up in Queensland, so we want to talk through the changes that are coming through there. We also want to talk about property management. When we talk about property managers, I feel like they are the unsung heroes that happen within someone's portfolio, but I can speak from experience. You don't want a bad property manager in your corner. So how do we find you a grade property manager? That's what we're going to do today. And that's where I wanted to welcome Kylie Walker from That Property Mum. G'day, how you doing?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. Now, I'm going to look over your shoulder. Is that a vision board that sits behind you?
It is, definitely is, yes.
I love a good vision board. We've actually done an episode on that as well. And actually, one of my good buddies reached out and says, because of that, he now has a vision board, which I thought was a really good example of taking action. So without you kind of bearing your soul there, what's on your vision board for those that can't see what's going on?
Well, my two biggest ones, and I'm not taking it down until I achieve them, is to meet Oprah Winfrey.
Nice.
Or want to interview her or get her on my podcast.
Yeah.
And the other one is Reese Witherspoon. So I'm in the process of writing a fiction book at the moment. So I want to get my book in her hands and obviously turn that into, some sort of a TV series or something. So they're my two really big goals. And now they're out in the universe. So
that's it.
We'll see if I can actually tick them off and get rid of that vision board.
Here we go. We've heard it here. And we're going to at some stage go, I interviewed Kylie, and that's going to be my claim to fame at some point in the future. So, mate, I wish you every success. That's what it's about.
Thank you.
And I think as a parent, you have to set that bar high, right? You want to set that frequency for your family going, mate, I've got a personal coach and she says the best is still yet to come. And I think I love that sentiment, which is people can often look back at the best years were behind them, but we say the best years are ahead of you. And I think that's something that you're doing. You're writing a book. You've got your course, you're running your business, family, and you've got these wonderful goals. I want to say kudos to you, mate. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, work never stops.
Yes. Well, what's parenthood? Parenthood is a full-time job on top of your full-time job. So with 4 kids, I dare say, you and a puppy in the midst, you've got plenty that you're juggling. So take me through a bit of the Kylie Walker story. How have you got to this point, and what I call the 3 Ps about yourself personally, professionally, and your property journey, and what you're happy to share?
Sure. My name's Kylie Walker, as you've alluded to now, and I am a mother of 4 and 2 fur babies, actually. So that is my full-time job. But originally I had a background in the media, and I was a TV sports journalist for many years. But I had to actually work weekends and late nights, and as you can imagine, with 4 young children, that I ran out of babysitting favours fairly quickly. So I decided to launch a real estate business, an independent brand. We started it back in 2011. It's called I Think Property. And this was right after the 2011 floods, where half of the core area that I was starting my business in went underwater.
Wow.
So I couldn't have started a real estate business, and my own property went under as well. So could not have started a real estate business in a worse time. But we were actually disgruntled investors ourselves, and I'm sure you've probably had personal experiences and spoken to lots of investors. Every investor I've ever spoken to has had a nightmare property management experience, and we were the same. So we decided to start our own business, and we thought, how hard can it be? We're just managing properties, right? Yes. Yep. But what I quickly realised is that we aren't actually property managers. We're actually people managers. And the skill in managing properties is actually in managing your relationships with people, investors, tenants, and even your own trades and suppliers.
Spot on.
So we don't just collect rent, and we don't just manage the maintenance, which is technically what we're paid to do. But it's way more nuanced than that. People will lose their jobs, marriages will break down. People will get addictions, financial struggles, mental health issues, which we found a lot of during COVID. And we have to navigate all those situations, making sure that we're still compassionate to people's extenuating circumstances, and yet still make sure that our property owners are able to meet their mortgage repayments and maintain that return on their investment. So it's definitely not an easy job, and I don't think people understand some of those challenges that property managers actually face.
Well said. That is
Oh, we
absolutely.
did it anyway.
Yeah. Nothing's going to stop you at that point once you got the idea in your head, right?
That's right.
But you've nailed it, which is your client who pays you is the landlord, but your other client is the tenant. And you are
Yes.
wedged in the middle of this relationship. And it's like you are the middle person and copying it from kind of both sides, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And no one ever calls you from either side, rarely, to say, hey, thank you so much for collecting my rent every week. Thank you so much for fixing my maintenance. Thank you so much for looking after the property. Thank you so much for inspecting it. We rarely get calls that are positive. Most of the calls that come in or emails that come in are always negative. There's always a problem.
Yep.
Why is my tenant 2 days late? Why with their rent? Why is this door handle loose? Why haven't you fixed it in 24 hours? You know, it can be really negative.
Yep.
And, you know, I guess, you know, something that I, you know, always teach and educate property managers on, it's a mindset thing too. Like it is a negative, can be negative, but you've got to not take all that sort of stuff personally. So, but yeah, it is definitely challenging.
Are you spot on? It's spot on. And I see same but different. I see a lot of similarities between broking and property management, where it can sit behind the scenes, and we'll get into this in a little bit more because it's one of the big questions I've got for you. But it's like people reach out to you when there's a need or it's time critical, for example, and you can see why this leads to burnout in our industries, because if you can't self-regulate as an individual, like as a broker or as a property manager, and you feel like everyone's just taking that energy from you, how do you lift yourself up with your own energy? And that effectively leads to people like wanting to leave the industry because they're constantly just giving, and no one's really replenishing their own energy stores.
That's a great way to explain exactly what happens to property managers.
Yeah.
And that's why we do have huge burnout, and we've had a mass exodus in the industry since COVID.
Correct. And you think about property management, you can't really charge more because you're paid that percentage, right? So it's effectively a flat fee. You can't just go, hey, look, I'm going to go out and this is going to take me 5 hours more. You kind of cap.
It's a subscription model. It's basically a subscription model for
Correct.
property management businesses.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the lower touch, the higher profitability, but this is not a low touch model when you're an active property manager.
No. Yep.
Yeah. So this kind of just opens the door to my question, which is, why on earth would someone self-manage their property? Because I've jumped on a few Facebook groups, and I do this purely as a spectator or a bit of market research. And there's so many people that say, I manage my properties myself. I'm like, are you mad? You have a full-time job and you're trying to do someone else's job? Just enlighten me here, because I don't have the answer. Why on earth does someone self-manage their investment property?
I have no idea as well. It seems ludicrous to me. If your car's
just to
broken
jump
down.
in, I'm granted that, this is like asking the hairdresser if you need a haircut. So they're going to say yes, but you jump in and you tell me your explanation.
Yeah, well, exactly the same as that.
Yep.
If you got a car broken down, you don't pop the hood and start fiddling around under the hood yourself. You go see a mechanic. And the same thing when it comes to managing properties. And like I said, we're not actually managing properties, we're actually managing people. And people come with all sorts of baggage, biases, complications, energy sucking issues, as you mentioned. And that's exhausting in itself, having to deal with that. You know, a lot of investors are already, I've got businesses, it's not their full-time business. They've got families. Why would you want to, throw that into the mix for as little as sometimes, we get paid, between, $30 to $50 a week per property is what it would cost an investor to have a property manager taking care of all of that for them. And when everything's going well for an investor or a self-managed owner, they think, oh my God, this is so easy. This is a breeze. And then all of a sudden, something will go wrong.
Yeah.
And they'll quickly realise, holy heck, I'm in big trouble here. I have no idea what to do next. And I've seen some of the best tenants on paper turn into absolute nightmares once the minute that something goes wrong in their personal life. Maybe it's, like I said, an addiction, maybe it's the loss of a loved one, maybe it's a marriage breakdown. And I have over the years, and I still do, get a lot of self-managed investors calling me up and saying, Kylie, I've got this situation, can you come and help me out? And probably the best example of what not to do as a self-managed owner is I had a lady, she managed around 20 properties herself as a part of a family portfolio. And she got all of her tenants on Gumtree. Red flag number one, don't ever do that. And when she came to me, I met her actually at the school tuck shop. We were doing sports day. And she was like really nervous and anxious and shaky. And I sort of, was talking to her, and I asked her what she does. And she said she's, self-managing all these properties. And I said, oh, I've got a real estate business, but I didn't try and get the business. Yeah. I just sort of offered to support her with some advice. And most of the tenants were over 6 months behind in their rent, and many of the properties had been absolutely trashed. So eventually, when I sort of gave her some solutions and tips, and she eventually came to me a couple of weeks later and said, can you just take over all these properties and manage them and fix them for me? Which was obviously a massive job, but they were losing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and it was an absolute nightmare. But we got in, we fixed it all up for her. No stress to them. She could sit back, watch the rent coming in.
A small price,
and it was a breeze. So yeah.
Small price
exactly.
to pay.
Small price to pay
to avoid that feeling, isn't it? Yeah, I'm glad you turned it around. That's
it seems crazy to do that.
It does
yourself.
seem crazy, doesn't it? I mentioned before around, I guess, our industry is similar. Low barriers to entry. Everyone seems like they're on a level playing field. So you collect the rent, for example, and you pass that on, you manage a few bills, and away you go as a property manager. And same with a broker. You arrange a loan and you get it submitted by a bank and approved. But you and I know that's not the case at all. There are property managers that are more equal than others, more experienced, more niched, for example, been around, maybe they've owned properties themselves, and then that starts to separate the good and then the great or the exceptional. So if someone's looking to engage a property manager, what are some of the good questions to be asking? How do you then differentiate someone that has experience or expertise? Take me through what's on your checklist.
I would say the first thing you want to do is look for someone who has experience. Definitely quite a few years experience is really important. And in that experience comes an understanding of the legislation, which is getting more and more complex by the year. We've just had a whole heap of new changes, which I think we'll discuss later on. But somebody that understands the legislation is really important. Secondly, I'd look for somebody that is in relatively close proximity to your investment. It doesn't have to be the exact suburb, but definitely that same area. And this is because you want somebody that really understands the local market, what rent is being achieved, and they're also close on hand if anything goes wrong, like the tenants abandon the property. And this does still happen. Or when you're reletting the property, you want to be able to, open the property up, show people through consistently. And finally, I'd look at what software and tech they are using as well. And I know this sounds like a really weird question.
No, this is great.
But the better agents and agencies will be using the latest tech and software. And the reason that I personally use the latest tech and software is because I want to be able to provide my investors with the ultimate in transparency on what is going on with their property. That protects me. And that also protects them. So things like tenants being able to, apply for properties 24/7 or book in viewings online. There's some amazing software and tech around inspection reports now. So you can put 360-degree cameras in properties. So this is going to eliminate the need to ever have to go to court over the condition of a property when the tenant moved in or throughout the tenancy. It is absolutely amazing technology, and if an agency isn't utilising that, I'd be questioning why. Also down to little things like having all your documents electronically signed, getting rid of all that paperwork, which creates a lot of room for errors. So they're probably the three top things that I would be looking for if I was an investor out in the marketplace at the moment.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Your last point, that point around technology, I think it's when you have a forward-thinking, progressive property manager, that's what it shows. Like someone that's investing in their business will invest in your greatest asset, which is your investment property, versus the stale. I see it when you go to listings for rent, and I look at our clients when they go to have their properties up for rent, and there's like one photo online. I'm like, what are you doing? how are you going to get a good quality tenant when they're not even showing the photos? How much extra effort would it really be to take just a good few photos to show the property in its glory that would attract a really good tenant? Does that surprise you?
No, no, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, the amount of photos you come across with toilets and lids up in photos for advertising your property, I don't know why, or grass backyards overgrown, or green pools. It doesn't take much, and I guess that's a sign of the professionalism of the company advertising your property. Unfortunately, we're in a market now where the properties are just renting. Rental prices are going through the roof, high demand, low supply, and property agencies unfortunately can get a little bit lazy when it comes to marketing the properties, because they know they're going to have 20, 30 people waiting to apply for that property. So it's when the market turns,
Correct.
That's when it's going to weed out the good property managers from the great property managers.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's go through these Queensland. So the changes that are happening in Queensland, because I know this is your neck of the woods. What's going on up in Queensland? So I've got a list here. We'll make this available as a downloadable if you've got investment property in Queensland or about to buy there as well. I'll whip through these and I'll get you to jump in and tell me a little bit more about it. So the first one is rent bidding. The agent is not permitted to accept rent offers higher than the advertised price. Take us through what happens there, Kylie.
Yeah. So this has actually always been in place in Queensland, and it's not really any different to what has been in place, although agencies have been doing it. And I think this is just like a warning to say, hey, we're onto this now. We're going to be looking and fining people for doing this. But basically, if you've got 20 applications, agencies are saying, look, I've got 20 applications, what's your best offer? Almost like a sales scenario.
Yeah.
Put your best offer forward for the property. And sometimes people can be paying up to $100 more than the asking price for a particular property. So that's kind of putting a stop to that at the moment.
Yeah, that's crazy sometimes, isn't it? What people were willing to, again, just take it off the market. I'll pay whatever is over everyone else to blow them out the water. Maximum rent in advance. The agent is not permitted to accept more than 1 month's rent in advance for a new tenancy. So this is when people go, I'll pay 3 months up front just so if I can get the property. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a little bit nuanced, because you can't ask them to pay more than the 1 month at the start of the tenancy, but the tenant can actually offer to pay more once they're in place in the tenancy. So if they write to you and say, hey, I want to pay 6 months in advance, so you could have this conversation behind the scenes and then tell the tenant, look, send me an email 1 month in that you want to pay 6 months in advance, and then we can still collect that 6 months in advance rent. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a bit of a loophole, bit of a grey one. I don't know. But yeah, that is, and what we're finding actually interestingly in the market at the moment is we've got a lot of people who've sold their properties and they've gone back into renting, in between before they decide what they're doing next. So they are cashed up, and they do want to, and because the market's so tight, they want to be able to get a property, and that's how they are actually securing a lot of properties, is by offering that rent in advance. So.
I was curious
I
as to why
guess
someone would
maybe
do it.
that's
Yeah.
evening out the playing field a bit. They're trying to even out that playing field a little bit for people who don't have that option. But there's a loophole. You can still do it. So I don't know.
Okay.
Legislation sometimes baffles me.
Yes, correct. Unintended consequences. Best a well-laid plan, but yeah, execution kind of falls down as well. But is this so? This becomes a bargaining chip where they will pay months up front. So I'm always curious. Why would you pay 6 months up front? Put that money somewhere else in a savings account and try and earn some more. But yeah, I see where you're going. Rent increases are limited to 12 months and are attached to the property instead of the tenancy.
Yep. So this one is, so yeah, we can only put the rental prices up once every 12 months now. And this will be an interesting one for your investors when they're purchasing a property to look out for. And it's included in the sales contract now that we have to actually disclose when the last date of the date the rent was last increased has to be included on all sales contracts now as well. So, and for us, when we're leasing the property out to tenants, we have to show them proof of the date of the last increase as well if they ask for it. So it's basically just making sure, obviously you want to be working with a property manager that knows the market well. although it is hard to know what the market's going to be like in 12 months' time. So,
Correct.
you know, today I am pricing properties at what they're likely to be 12 months from now. So, you know, as we know, supply and demand can, you know, quickly change in certain areas if new developments come in. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like a watch this space. You know, what's going to happen with that. But yeah, at the moment, 12 months is the only time you can increase.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that used to be the thing where they could just keep jacking up the rents on a tenant, then they'd go out and then you put a new tenant in there and they could just keep bumping that rent
Jack it up again.
Yeah, correct.
Yep. So that's eliminating that now.
Yeah.
So a lot of property owners were only doing like 6-month leases, and then they'd get rid of the tenants and then they'd put new ones in, you know, increase it by another $50. And then just continue that cycle. So
thanks, Kylie. Appreciate that. Rent payment methods. Tenants must be offered 2 ways to pay rent, including a way that does not incur more than the usual bank costs.
Yeah, so that's basically just a free method. So that's actually not come in yet. So there's the next lot of changes are due to come in later on this year. But that's just basically tenants just have to have a free option to pay rent, which is really difficult because there's not a lot of free options for us as agencies unless we give out our bank account details, which we don't like giving out our bank account details because if they don't put the right references there, we end up with a lot of, you know, funds that we can't reconcile. And, you know, it's not best practice, I guess, to have, you know, 600 or 1,000 people with your bank account details either. So, so that's going to be a bit of an issue for agencies more than anyone else. So,
okay, good
rather
to know.
than investors.
Utility invoices, for example, water. A tenant must receive their invoices within 4 weeks of the bill being issued by the service provider. Is this just a matter of tardiness, or is this something that's rife in the industry?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. So at the moment, most agencies would wait for a client to send through once they've paid their water bill, their water bills. They wait for them to send them through to us, and then we invoice and offset the water usage costs to the tenant. But what happens is sometimes, you know, we all are busy and we forget to send these bills through, and then all of a sudden you might send through the last, you know, year's worth of bills, and then the tenants hit, you know, with, you know, 3 or 4 bills all at once. So I guess it's just making it a bit fairer for tenants to have the funds available with, you know, cost of living increases. What I do in my agency is I recommend that all my clients have their water bills and their council rates all directed through to our agency, and we pay them, process them all out of rental payments. We don't miss a bill. It just, you know, we pay the bill, the tenant gets invoiced. There's no room for, you know, the things not being done. So if you are working with an agency and they have that option, I would recommend that, just get all your bills assigned to your agency, have them pay them on your behalf, and it's all streamlined then in your end of financial year statement. You don't have to go looking for your rates bills and stuff. It's all there for your accountant. Send off the one document. Done.
Well said. This becomes particularly important as you start to scale up. There's a great interview that we did with Nick Fowle, the accountant that I met through Australian Property Scout, and this is what he's saying: as people start to scale up, the ones that are really, really good and well organised in terms of the admin, whether it's the loans and the interest and all the bills and maintenance, the ones that can be organised are the ones that can scale. The ones that are disorganised, they're fumbling around. It's like this is the stuff that will hold them back. So to your point, if your property manager has the ability to take that on, it's a no-brainer that you'd almost delegate your admin to your property manager.
Absolutely. We even pay insurances as well. So
there you go. Yeah.
Body corporate, all that sort of stuff.
Beautiful. Minimum entry notice periods increase from 24 hours to 48 hours. A bit of respect for a tenant if you're trying to get access.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's, 24, 48 hours. It's not really a big deal at the end of the day, unless obviously if it's an emergency maintenance, we can still access that. So, but that's, I think just giving them better conditions for the tenants.
Okay, great. Frequency of entry, new limits apply after a notice to end the tenancy has been issued.
Yeah. So I guess this is when we're reletting the property. We're looking for new tenants, and holding open homes. It's just, I guess, making it again a little bit easier for the tenants not to have, 3 times a week people traipsing through the property. It's only down to 2 times a week, which I don't know many agencies that would do open homes more than twice a week anyway. So yeah, just giving them some more, peace of mind or privacy.
Yeah. Okay,
Make it
great.
easier.
Thank you very much. Maximum bond, no more than 4 weeks rent can be requested by an agent.
Yeah, that's already in place at the moment. So, that is part of the legislation currently. So, I think what they're probably going to crack down on fines more around that. I guess now a lot of agencies in the past have taken extra bond for sort of pet, for pet insurances. If somebody wants a pet, they'll say, well, you've got to pay an extra 2 weeks on top of your bond in case the pet does some damage. So that they're just going to crack down on that a lot harder and issue some fines. Some of the fines around this legislation is crazy, and interestingly, the fines are going against the property managers, not the business owners. So
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So a level of responsibility has to come down to the individual property manager as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like any, especially like us, extra level of compliance, your operating costs start to go up because it's your time that then goes into managing the business and the changes in this business, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Evidence for bond claims. The agent must provide the tenant with supporting evidence within 14 days of lodging a bond claim or dispute.
Yeah. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult because obviously this is, if we've got to take out carpet cleaning or we've got to take out repairs or pest control. And sometimes it's really hard to get our trades to the property to do those ideally we get them there, within the sort of 7 days, but it's getting increasingly harder to get trades to properties at the moment. I'm not sure if other property managers are experiencing that, but certainly in my area. So yeah, that could be a bit of a problem where bonds might get released back to tenants before we can claim what we need to claim. So there'll be a bit more urgency around that when tenants are vacating. Maybe mitigating that by putting some vacate inspections in place, which we've just started. We'll go in about 3 weeks out, do a pre-vacate inspection, and make sure that we are across. And for example, one of my properties. It's going to need a lot of work. There's an iron mark on carpet, so we know we're going to need carpets replaced, which could take longer than that 14-day period, and holes in walls. So we're kind of working with the tenant now to get a lot of that stuff done before they actually vacate the property. So, so it's just, I think, a change in processes for agencies around that will be required.
Just out of curiosity, what type of damage? What's bad? Like, what have you seen that's terrible in terms of? You were seeing it all, right? There's obviously great tenants and that leave the place in a great place and respectful, and then you have some horror stories. I'm curious.
Yeah. I have got a lot of stories I could tell you, but probably the one that sticks in my mind the most was a self-managed one. Some family friends of mine, their father was managing the property himself, and there was drug dealers in the property, and drug addicts and drug dealers, and he couldn't, communicate with them, had run out of options to get them out of the property. So he asked me to, could I help? So I, tried all my options, all my negotiation skills, and eventually I had to just go and knock on the door. And the tenant has opened the door and the door was wedged shut with a butcher's knife. And he's pulled the butcher's knife out and he's standing there with this, big butcher's knife in front of me. You could not see in the house from stolen goods were absolutely everywhere. Anyway, had a conversation. Anyway, long story short, I ended up getting him out of the property. They actually took a lot of their valuable stolen goods and then just abandoned the property. But sadly, when we went in there, this is still to this day, and I actually showed my kids the photos of this property because I wanted them, obviously, my kids are very privileged kids. They've gone to good schools. I wanted them to see that that's not how everybody lives and how other kids are not. So in this property, the family had, and I'd done a bit of stalking on Facebook, and that had 7 kids taken off them. And in the baby's cot in the bedroom, it was full of needles. But on the wall behind the baby's cot, and this is like digressing, sorry, totally off topic, but on the wall behind the cot was instructions for this baby's care, like, at 8 a.m, get up, feed the baby bottle number 1 in the fridge, change baby's nappy 9:30, 11 a.m, baby's bottle, you know what I mean? Just, how a baby is left in this environment, I have no idea. But anyway, it was a very sad situation, and I used it as a teaching opportunity for my children. So that's probably the worst experience I have. But I don't understand why people this mentality when people go into a property, they've got housing, which is one of our prime human core needs. We need housing, we need a home, and then when as they go in, they're all so grateful and thank you so much. I've got a roof over my head for my family. By the time they leave, they don't. I don't know if I can swear, but they don't give a crap about the property. A lot of them, not all of them, and there's damages, their rent's behind. They don't clean it. Like I just. And then they expect us to give them references to move into another property. It is very frustrating, that part of the property management journey.
Yeah.
And I just don't get that mentality from people, and I never will get that mentality from people. So, I don't know if you can relate to that
that story breaks me. I hear that stuff. It really, I guess as a parent, it really kind of grinds up against your gears, doesn't it? When you hear a story like that, you're like, I don't know how you live like that, one, but also it is a renting mindset. I've had a chat with quite a few people around this, particularly investors, where they're renting some really good properties out, but the people just have this helplessness about them. It's like they can't even fix something themselves. It's like they've just got to call the property manager and make it someone else's fault, and it becomes a renting mindset, like the light globe. It's like, dude, you can just change a light globe. That is not hard to do. And
I had that yesterday. I had that exact example yesterday. They said the light in the kitchen's not working. I said, have you changed the light bulb? No, I didn't know I had to do that. Oh,
wow. Yeah.
Mind explodes. But yeah, it is. It does become that. And I think because rents have gone up so much now, tenants feel like they're paying a fortune for their properties. Their expectations with maintenance has gone through the roof. And once upon a time, you could wait till the routine inspection, and we would then, you collectively get all the maintenance that's required then. So you can send one trade out and do all the maintenance that's required, rather than having one trade to go out and change a light bulb, or one trade to go out and fix a loose door handle. So, I think now that we need to change the way that we're doing maintenance. I think that's definitely something that needs to be addressed in property management businesses. And I've got a few ideas around this, but it's definitely an area where the tenants' expectations have changed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Let's they've got 2 more to tick off here. Rental application.
I digressed. That story.
I think it was definitely worth having a chat about the rental application process. New standardised rental application form to be used with limits on what information can be requested from the tenant.
Yeah. So I think they're just going to bring out an application form that's across the board that all tenants fill in. So you can't, I'm not sure what we can and can't ask for. They haven't been clear or specific on that yet. But we ask for a lot of documentation now. Whether that's breaching privacy, I'm not sure. But it'll be interesting to see what they allow us to have and not have. At the moment, we can actually get tenants' bank account details, which is great. It gives us, great transparency over what their spending habits are. Because at the end of the day, it's all well and good if the tenant can afford the property, which is getting harder and harder to find tenants, I'll be honest, at the moment with the way that rental prices are increasing. it's really hard for us to find tenants that can afford the rents right now.
Wow.
And we are, like, our affordability is normally 30%. We're pushing that out to 40% now. But it's all well and good if they tick that box. But then if you have a look at their bank statements and, you know, they're at the pokies every night or, and there's no judgment here on that either. It's just, you know, we know that they're, you know, they're probably going to struggle if, you know, with their expenses, or they probably don't have a budget in place, or
I mean, you're looking through the lens of would I mean, your client's the landlord. Would I entrust this landlord's greatest asset to this individual? It's like we look through the lens, would a bank lend this money to a client, for example, and you become that litmus test for does this pass? Is this kosher? And if you're looking at if you're looking at that going, if this was my property, would I put them in there? And you're going, question mark, then you wouldn't do it to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, exactly. That is a great way to explain it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know whether we'll be able to still have access to that or not, which will be interesting to see.
And I mean, you and I, again, similarities. We come across a lot of sensitive data. And I think that's probably, again, alludes to, like, you know, better security measures. You know, you get access to someone's bank accounts, passports, ID documents, you name it, you know, ATO portals, and you go tax returns. We're sitting on a lot of confidential, sensitive data. So if it limits it, but then you've still got to kind of find a way to vet a client, for example, or a tenant, some standardization would be good. All right, and the last one, request for fixtures and structural changes. Revise the process for a tenant to request fixtures to the agent, who must respond within 28 days.
I think this is just ridiculous, this one. I absolutely have no idea what you know, I have no idea what that actually means, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more clarity around what that is. But the way that it reads is that a tenant can go in and say, hey, I'm not happy with these fixtures, and you know, I'm not really happy with the structure of the back deck. It faces the wrong way and I don't get the morning sun. Like, can they, and the owner's got to respond to that within 28 days, and can the owner just say no? Like, yes. I don't understand it, to be honest, like, just to be completely honest. And it seems a little bit crazy. Fair enough if it's a dangerous fixture or a dangerous structural issue, fair enough. Like, they have to be fixed. That's a no-brainer. But I'm just not really sure what that is going to mean for investors when they're purchasing properties. So
my interpretation of that was probably that last bit, who must respond within 28 days. I feel like it's more a responsiveness than a timeliness thing. Possibly, because
and what are they just all going to say no? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, So the response is no. Sorry.
It's creating more admin is possibly what's going to happen there as well, right?
I know, and it seems like it's just giving more power to tenants, but I don't understand why the tenants would need that power to request fixtures and structural changes. Anyway, I just don't get that one. So
watch this space. Watch this space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, perfect.
I'll come back on and vent about it then.
Yes, great. At the very start, I said around, you know, not all property managers are created equally, and we talk about in our respective fields, someone strategic, someone that kind of plays a bigger game or can see the bigger picture here for a client's portfolio as well. And one of the big things, especially in this current higher rate environment, is increasing yields. You know, investors are chasing better yields, for example. What's the easiest way to turn that tap on is to find ways to increase the rent. Now, again, the laws are saying we can only increase the rent at certain times, but to get to that point where you can justify a rent increase or make the profit, make a higher margin, what are some of the ways that you can give advice to your own investors or investors at large to go, here's how to become more strategic with your yield increases as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you just said then, obviously increasing the rent is the easiest way to improve the rental yield. And I think having a property manager, having an experienced property manager who understands investment and managing investments, you'll have a lot of people who can manage the properties, but you don't get a lot of property managers that actually understand even what a rental yield is. You'll be surprised, and that would probably be a great way of vetting a property manager. What is the rental yield on this property? So that, having somebody that really understands that and is making sure that, obviously we've got to look now with our rents through a lens of 12 months in advance, and understanding what that market's going to be doing. And I don't know, I don't know what that, this has only just come in like on the 6th of June. So I don't know what that's going to look like. Are we all going to be putting that rent, up by way too much, and then the market's going to come back? And these poor tenants that are locked in for that, so I don't know what's going to happen there. But yeah, getting as much rent as you possibly can is obviously the first way. And then offsetting some of your expenses that the tenants can pay for, like your water usage. You'd be surprised at how many property owners don't offset their water usage to the tenants. It's the biggest part of the bill. And you can charge in Queensland the state bulk water charge and the tenant usage charges. You do have to have the property water compliant, and that is as simple as getting your plumber out there to go and make sure that the property is water compliant and giving you a certificate. So I would definitely recommend that, especially if you've got an older property. It's not that expensive to get it up to date with compliance. I would also make sure that, I think I alluded to this before about, maintenance. It's got to be handled in a different way. I think a lot of agencies, I've got a new maintenance software that I've implemented in my business that creates great transparency for the tenants, the property owners and the suppliers. Everybody's in the loop with every step of the way. But making sure that that's more systemised so that you don't have a lot of wasted expenses on call-out fees for, somebody to go, or, a lot of trades are now charging to go out and quote. So just making sure that, that your agency has a really a systemised way, I guess, of managing maintenance so that you can reduce your expenses around maintenance. I'd also be talking to your accountant and getting that depreciation schedule looked at when it comes to end of financial year. If you've got a mortgage, again, I've been advising, and I do annual investor reviews with my clients, and I always ask them, when was the last time you spoke to a mortgage broker and had a look at, refinancing. And if you've had your property for over 10 years and you haven't had a recent sales valuation or appraisal, it might be worthwhile having a look at what the prices are now selling for. It's always handy to keep abreast of the sales market anyway, but you might find that there is a substantial amount of equity in that property, and you might be able to either sell it, or you might be in a position for another property acquisition. So
spot on.
So there's not a lot of options when it comes to rental, improving and I guess the rental yield comes down to the price you buy in at as well, doesn't it? So that's the starting point for a great rental yield.
Correct.
Yeah.
There could be ways you get it's like a incremental uplift. You do a facelift on it, new paint, new flooring, for example, update some bits and pieces, and you might get a slight premium, and you can write those expenses off, for example. But to me, the ultimate way you got to look through the property is what's valuable to a tenant. And I think the ones that really pop up is plug points, storage, for example, good internet. So if you can kind of tick a few boxes there, you don't have to spend too much to really appease a tenant in that case as well, because like you said, there is a shortage of properties and there's more tenants, I guess, that are banging on the door, such low vacancy rates as well. So this is a good time to be an investor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Surprisingly, though, low maintenance yards seems to be very popular. Nobody wants to spend time in yards anymore, and fully fenced yards as well. Making sure, because a lot of tenants have got pets, so
pets or kids.
If if you're excluding pets, you're excluding a large part of the market. So
just on that, could you include, if you want to keep your property well maintained, could you include like a lawn, like someone that comes and mows the lawn as part of that? Like what's the rules around this, or what's the advice that you'd give around this?
Yeah, you definitely can increase the rent by including yard maintenance or pool maintenance or other types of maintenance. So you can definitely add on, whatever that is going to cost over the month, the month or a week or whatever. Just work out the cost of that and add it in. And it's if you've got even hedging. Hedging is probably something I would be looking at. And if if you, not so much for investors. I mean, a lot of investors don't even see their investment properties. So it's more the homeowners who've left the property, who are emotionally invested in it. They're more inclined to want things, left as it was when they'd spent all their time, putting their hedges in from seedlings and growing them. They're very house proud and yard proud. But for a lot of investors, and to be honest, a lot of the stock that investors are buying are postage stamps anyway. So yards are really low maintenance, and that seems to be what tenants want as well. So,
yeah, okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. How can people find a little bit more about you and what you offer as well, and which areas do you particularly service as well?
Yeah, so I'm based in Ipswich and Toowoomba, and I do service Brisbane as well, western sort of corridor of Brisbane, Springfield Lakes, that sort of area. And I have a property management mentoring business as well called That Property Mum. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook at That Property Mum, or it's my website's ithinkproperty.com.au if you wanted to reach out to me through there for any investing. And I'm happy to share, any advice, direct people. I've got a lot of connections through my mentoring business across Australia. I can definitely, direct you to the right property manager in your particular area.
Awesome. How good's that? That's one of the questions that comes up a lot is, who knows a property manager in this area? I see this all the time in a lot of the investor Facebook groups as well. So a resource like that where you can go in and tap the shoulder and go, who's best in breed in a particular area? That's a really handy tip there as well, Kylie. I want to say thank you very much, and I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, unpacking the new changes in rental laws as well to come out in Queensland. And I want to tip my hat to you, say, look, property managers are the unsung heroes, doing a great job, mate. Keep it up.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. I really appreciate it.
No dramas. That's a wrap for another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And like I said, if you know someone that's got a rental property in Queensland who wants to be ahead of these changes, share this episode. That's where we're getting a lot of people, a lot of traction. Our ripple effect starts to get bigger and better when people are sharing the episodes and saying, hey, check this one out because it might be helpful for you as well. So we'll get you back on at some point, Kylie, and check in and see how you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, gang. We'll chat soon. Bye.